It was a dark and stormy night. I was preoccupying myself with the pitter-patter of the rain and waiting until the light would turn itself out as... Oh, okay. Right, yeah, so that's the thing. Because we're waiting for the heat to die down and it's flickering something fierce, there we go, and it's finally out. Okay, but I did always want to see that happen. I think I just really need to figure out a way to smooth at least the door opening, because, like, the light flickering could be realism, and the door opening and shutting, though, really detracts from it. Not that I think we can hear it from here, but I always wanted to see that light turn out, and of course it stops raining right now. Welcome back to TEYARA SMP, a TNP Limitless 7 series, and we've got a bit of a shorter episode today. I'm still working on one of my larger builds in the background, but we do have some updates since last time, so if I start by jumping off the roof to my lower roof, we have some cable facades here, and that is because we've done some funky stuff with actual subnets now. You may recall that last week we had some issues with the charger, and I don't think I actually tried to automate anything with the inscriber, but we tried to charge something with a charger using autocrafting and it didn't work because I forgot that the charger itself doesn't have any automatic output. And the problem is, with Applied Energistics autocrafting, you need to put the item back in the pattern provider, and I think it also has to be the same one that it originated in. Now, don't quote me on that, it could just be that if it detects that there's more in the system, it decrements the amount needed in the craft. So, if you happen to know that specific detail, then please let me know down in the comments. But as far as I'm aware, you need to return the item back to the pattern provider, which the pattern is in, for the crafting to register successfully. So, because we didn't have the output here, we needed to take matters into our own hands and make some actual subnets, as opposed to subnets that are just a couple of AE devices that aren't quite connected to the network like we had last week. No, these are real subnets, in which we have some quartz fiber connected up to the main net to transfer power, and we have two subnets here and one over here, and they all work the same kind of way. You have your device that the pattern provider inputs into, because it can do that by itself. And once it is done charging, due to the property of Applied Energistics devices, that when they're done processing, the item goes into the output slot, for lack of a better term, we can then take it out of that device using an import bus. Because remember, we are importing into this subnet. But that's the subnet, you say. How do we get it back into the mainnet? And there, we have storage buses. And if you recall, storage buses are what we use to store things in any kind of storage. And I do mean any kind of storage that, I don't know if it has to be like a one-to-one inventory or if it can be storage drawers, but just as long as there's some kind of inventory that items can be inserted into, the storage bus will register it. So in this case, it registers the pattern provider, which we requested the craft from, and it'll take the item out using the import bus and immediately put it into the actual network using the pattern provider. And that's the same across all three subnets here, because they're all Applied Energistics devices. Now while we're back here, we also see an energy P2P tunnel, and that's really important, and we're going to get to that shortly once we're on the inside. I'm now contemplating removing this wall here and putting another pressure plate here. That could be something I do. I'll need to think on that more. But you may remember that originally we had a P2P tunnel for energy here, and you would think that that means that it could transfer energy to all of the other P2P tunnels that we have dotted about the room, right? You're wrong. If Forge Energy touches an acceptor, it immediately gets converted into AE, which, if you recall, is the Applied Energistics energy format. Unfortunately, if you read the manual, it says that it's a one-way conversion. You can't convert from AE back to FE, unless there's some device that does it that I'm not aware of, but that's irrelevant at this point in time. The TLDR is that when we had the P2P tunnel on this cell, it wasn't going to transfer power to any of these thermal series devices, because thermal series devices requires base FE, Forge Energy. So Even though this is displaying in FE, it's really still stored in AE, only the display units are different. And so, by adding the P2P tunnel on the accumulator, we have added a second way to input power into the system, technically speaking, but we're bypassing converting into AE because we have the P2P tunnel, which is just routing energy through the network as itself, as opposed to the converted form. And with our outputs, you can see that we have filled all of our thermal series devices with a respectable power buffer. And let's go ahead and go over each of the items and what we can do with them. So this is a redstone furnace. It's exactly what it says on the tin. I'm pretty sure any recipe that works in a regular furnace will also work here. The GUI is pretty straightforward. Yes, and here's one crucial thing that I almost missed with this that had me really frustrated, thinking that I needed even more subnets for this. When you are configuring your input and output for the thermal series, orange is your output, blue is your input. That's pretty standard across most mods because it precipitated back in like 1.7 or earlier. But we've got both our input and output to the same side. So that's to say, out this side to the back that we can't actually see here. We have our pattern provider as one of these flat things, so that it's hooked up to the redstone furnace, specifically. And that means that any recipes that we put into it are going to apply just to this. And that's fine. That's kind of what we want. We want to say, like, hey, when we smelt ores, put them in here, or something like that. Actually, we don't want to smelt ores. We want to smelt, like, crushed ingots or something like that. But you get the idea. The things that we smelt, we want to go into here. And so, this will input and output to that specific face. The problem is, I kind of missed this part. Because back in the day, I think you also had to like add a different augmentation in order to make it automatically input or output. So we've got this servo configuration where you can just enable the auto output. And that's what I was missing at first. This wasn't enabled. So the items would come into the blue, get processed, and then they would sit here. And I knew that thermal series devices can output stuff automatically. I missed this configuration. So be sure to double check that your auto output is enabled if you're going to be doing automation with thermal. So that's the redstone furnace. Below it, we have the blast chiller. And I know what you're thinking, it's kind of weird that we've got a blast chiller like directly next to a bunch of really hot things. But the way I'm kind of role-playing it, and it doesn't really make any sense because, I mean, these are all just box input modules, really. But the way I'm playing it is that the blast chiller cools things and then dumps its heat into the rest of the stuff. So even though, yes, you are also powering these with energy, that's just kind of my justification for having this here. It just also kind of made a little bit more sense organizationally than putting it somewhere else in the room. But we have the blast chiller, which can take a whole bunch of stuff and, as it says on the tin, chill it. So the way that we're probably mostly going to be using this is to make ice, and I think you can get up to packed ice with this. If not, all you have to do is just craft ice a few different times, which we can automate using our material grid to my left. But the other thing that it lets us do is make obsidian. And yes, we already have other ways of making obsidian, but you pump lava into this blast chiller, and then it turns into obsidian. It's pretty nice. There are a few other things that we can do that with, like I think destabilized redstone can be converted back into blocks. I think glowstone, energized glowstone, can be converted back into a block as well. Then we have the magma crucible. This is what lets us convert any kind of igneous rock into lava. So I'm pretty sure this applies to cobblestone for some reason. It also lets you do obsidian, I believe, can be converted back into the lava. I think magma can do it, and I also think netherrack does it. So it really doesn't make any sense. It's Minecraft logic. All of those things can be converted into lava, which is really useful because we don't currently have an infinite source available to us. And then below that is the induction smelter, which, again, we're using the idea that we're dumping heat up into the magma crucible from the action of the the induction smelter. And so what the induction smelter does is we have 3 inputs, and that allows you to make alloys of stuff. You can also use it as just a regular old smelter, but We could use this to make electrum, even though we can already make that other ways. We can use this to make enderium, I think it's called, because you just need like ender dust and a couple other materials in here. This can be useful for a lot of things. It can just be used as a regular old smelter, specifically for ores, if I recall correctly, but I intend to mostly do the smelting in the furnace and have the induction smelter pumping out alloys and the like. So if we take a look over here, there are a bunch of changes, some more minor than others. The big one that you might notice off the bat is that we don't have the interface form of the pattern provider, we have the full block form. I already kind of went over that, so we'll not redo it. Over here, we have the extended charger and inscriber from ExpandedAE. That basically gives 4 slots for different operations. The charger doesn't really have a GUI. We can't augment it any more than we can pump power into the system, so that's pretty much that. Then we have the extended inscriber, where you can see that we have access to 4 jobs instead of just 1. Now, there are a few specifics about the inscriber that we need to talk about. Because this is used to manufacture not only complete chips, which is what we're primarily using it for now, but also the chip components, as well as duplicating press parts, we can only do things that fully consume the materials that are on the left, lest we want to put something in here that can't be extracted, which this is the only output. So we can't duplicate inscribing presses because you need to leave it in here. The system can't extract from the insertion side. And that means that when you're making a pattern for this, you only want to provide the iron block. You basically assume that the inscriber is just going to be used to replicate presses, and you put the one press that you want to replicate in here. Now, we can't even really use an extended inscriber for that, just because we have all 4 slots, and I don't think there's a way to control which slot the item goes into based upon the recipe that we're inserting for. So unfortunately, that's right out. I think the same probably also holds true if we're trying to make chips over here, so the inscriber plus whatever material that it makes the chip component out of can't really go here. So we really just have the 3, or the currently 3, eventually 4, chip recipes where you put in the top chip component made of either Certus or diamond or gold or the mod material that we don't have just yet, your redstone dust in the middle, and then the silicon wafer at the bottom. And that will make a chip that can then come out of the network because it's extracted from this side. One last thing before I move off of the inscriber is that we also have these acceleration card upgrade slots. If we put them in, the jobs will get done faster, but I believe that also consumes more power. To the left is our solution for not being able to produce chips en masse. We have the circuit slicer, which, if you put in one of the blocks that makes chip components, it will spit out that number of chip components in proportion to whatever the raw material that goes into the block is. So for example, diamond will output 9 just because there's 9 diamonds to one block, so you get 9 chips out of it. Certus quartz block is more like nether quartz, so you put one of those in here, you get out 4 chip components for that. Silicon and gold are also 9 based blocks, so that's why you get 9 out of that recipe. And if we take a look at this pattern provider and mouse over some of this stuff, you can see we've got the same quantities reflected here. Now, the other thing is, this accepts a fluid. It needs to have the fluid in order to work. It's basically like, I guess, coating the saw blade that's in there, allowing it to cut more effectively or something like that, making it not heat up as much. It's just a manufacturing thing. I don't know the exact specifics to the physics behind it, but trust me, it's done in shops. I happen to know that much. So you put in your fluid here. And the problem is that although the recipe specifies something like 100 millibuckets, it actually requires more than that because this is a constant drain operation. So if we go back to the pattern provider, we've got 0.475 buckets, which is just a rough calibration based upon trying to run these recipes before. And then we have 0.5 with the quartz block, which for some reason, despite being smaller, required more water. And maybe that's just because I was trying to do it in bulk, but the TLDR is eventually the fluid that you pump into here runs out, and so this is just kind of close enough that by the time it's done with whatever batch job we're doing, there's no more water left. There's also that one modded recipe that I've talked about that requires lava instead. And again, I don't remember what the materials are involved in that because we're nowhere near that yet. I just know that it requires a lot more resources than we have right now. So that is everything that's changed about this wall here. Let's shuffle on over here. So we have the pulverizer. It's pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. It converts ores and stuff into dust. And I think we can also use this to make... I don't know if we can get to sand via the pulverizer, but we can sure as heck get to gravel, I'm pretty sure. If we switched this out for an Ender IO pulverizer, or I think it's called a macerator? I think it's a macerator. Then you can use that to get to gravel, which you can use to get to sand. Either way, we can't quite auto-produce sand with the setup that we have here, at least not that I'm aware of, so some modifications may be done in the future. But again, this is exactly what it says on the tin. It takes stuff in and it crushes it. Next to it is the sawmill, so that when we eventually hook up some kind of wood source, and I'm guessing we're probably going to use an ender drawer from the tree farm, and probably either dark oak or spruce, possibly both if I'm feeling like it. So we'll use that to more effectively strip stuff. I think we can strip wood in the sawmill, and we can also get more planks out of individual logs than we could if we just crafted them. So this is going to be slightly more efficient when it comes to making wood-based items as well. And then last, and I'm pretty sure we talked about it last time as well, we have our molecular assemblers and pattern providers and the like. Let me see if I have enough in here that we can go for them. I've made crafting recipes for a bunch of these storage components, and that is one part so that we can start filling in these disk drives. And let me see, can I make this? I can't make this because I'm missing redstone dust and quartz crystals. So after a little bit of mental back and forth, I finally decided, you know what, let's just go get the materials as opposed to wasting time trying to figure out what to craft here. So we're going to hop straight to this 256k ME storage component that we frankly don't really need right now. But we're going to do it anyway because it demonstrates all of the crafting principles that we have here. So we're going to craft a lot of stuff. Various tiers of storage components, of course. We have, I think, all of the chips and the like that we're going to need. We do have a crafting, or a crushing recipe, specifically with skystone dust in the press, which is one of the few things that we can do there. We also have Certus quartz dust automated there as well. So you know what, I'm just going to stop blathering. Let's fire this up. And I think we're going to see that most of the stuff is going to happen off to the left first, and then we'll finally see the machines off to our right activate. So let's go ahead and do... Oh, never mind. Okay, so it's crafting all of the things that it can right now, and that's all of the lower tier storage components that we already have the stuff for, I believe. So that just went really fast. But then if we come over here, you can see that it's crushing some crystals as well as the skystone into dust. And so we're going to get, yep, now you can see it, some more things are getting processed over here. If we take a look real quick into our status screen, you can see what we still have left to make here. But the cool part is already kind of done. We saw a whole bunch of stuff being made that we already had the materials for. And keep in mind that applied energistics recipes, at least when it comes to these storage components, you usually need 3 of the base component in order to make the next tier up. So jumping all the way to 256 means that we're making most of the powers of 2 below that to get to this point. Or certain powers of 2, I should say. Not all of them. I think it skips every 4? Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think it starts off at 1, goes to 4096, then 16, whatever, 64, and then 256. Still crafting? Yep, still crafting. And this also illustrates a very important thing, because if we go into these pattern providers, I don't know if it's this exact one, but yes, so you can see that we have the 4K storage component here, which means that it can be crafted on any of these three. We have, oh, surprisingly nothing in here. I've gone for the corners on pretty much everything then. So we've got the 16K one here, which limits it to these three surrounding it. We have the 1K and the 64K up here. The 4K up here. And the another 1K? Oh, yes, of course. So because some recipes like this one build exponentially like that, I have naturally included multiple copies of the same recipe in different machines so that more machines than one can process them simultaneously. I think I've managed to arrange it in such a way that devices will not overlap the same chip with each other. So like if there's a 1K up here, and I'm just pulling that out of my head, if there's a 1K here, then we don't also have a 1K in here, because obviously the 1K does this, and then the 1K down here would do this and this and this. So basically I just wanted to make sure that any recipe is distributed as best I can. That's going to be a little bit difficult with the particular layout that we have here, but hopefully we can do some fixes down the road, maybe even expand to the expanded pattern provider, I think that's what it's called, which lets us put more patterns in here, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's probably right. We are apparently done with our recipe now, and you can see that we have one sparkling, probably useless 256 ME storage component. So let's see what we can actually do with that. 256K. And if I right click here, we can, of course, I think, immediately try to make it into the mega storage component for mega cells. There is an alternate upgrade line, and I don't know what mod adds it. Maybe this is what I'm thinking of? Yes, AE Additions, which would allow us to go to this next tier of storage component. But again, keep in mind how much redstone and glowstone that we just had to put into the system, and this is kind of infeasible for us right now, at least until we get hooked up with our mystical agriculture. So we can make a bunch of these different drives, I think. Let's just go ahead and make an item storage cell, just because I think we can do that. Ooh, better yet, let's make a fluid storage cell, and we can demonstrate how the defragging should work, ostensibly. So let's go ahead and make one of these. I'm glad that we can make one of these, but we now have a really big fluid storage cell. So we have here our 4K storage cell, which only has 44 buckets of lava in it, but we still want to move that to our new drive. So if I put this here, theoretically, we can put this into our chest, and we should see this empty out. It's not emptying out. That means that this is not working the way that I thought it was supposed to. Okay, well, potentially what that means is that this needs to be fully considered. No, it is definitely different than the other storage network, so maybe this doesn't want an import bus? It's possible that we don't do an import bus here. It's possible that we need to do another subnet in order to insert into there, which is going to be really difficult because we don't have much in the way of dimensionality. I need to think about this. TLDR, I need to think about how we're defragging stuff, and right now the lava that's in here isn't going to matter whatsoever. I guess for now we can just put it back into a different drive bay, but it'd be nice to be able to move the fluid from here into the top one. But that is going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified. And as always, I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments below. And with that, I will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching, everybody. In the upper left is the next video in the series, or a video you might like. In the lower left is the series playlist, and on the right is my icon, by which you can subscribe. Thanks again for watching.